You sit down to do one simple thing: reply to the message, open the document, apply for the job, clean the room, and somehow your brain turns it into something heavy. So you scroll instead, or stare at the ceiling, or suddenly become interested in reorganizing your desk for 20 minutes. Then the guilt starts, because from the outside, it looks like laziness. But deep down, it doesn't feel like laziness. It feels more like being trapped behind invisible glass. You know what you should do. You even want your life to change. But every possible direction feels emotionally expensive. And the strange part is, the more important something becomes, the harder it is to move toward it. Not because you don't care, because somewhere in your mind, movement stopped feeling safe. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from working too hard. It comes from carrying too many unresolved emotional calculations at once. What if I fail? What if I succeed and everything changes? What if people expect more from me after this? What if I choose wrong? What if this version of me disappears? These thoughts rarely sound dramatic in your head. They just quietly slow your body down. So you start calling yourself lazy. But your nervous system may be doing something very different. It may be cornered. Psychology has a concept called avoidance coping. It happens when the brain interprets certain actions not as neutral tasks, but as emotional threats. Not physical danger, identity danger. And identity threats are powerful because your brain treats stability as survival, even if the stability is making you miserable. A person can stay in a routine they hate for years, simply because uncertainty creates more emotional tension than unhappiness does. That's why you can desperately want change, while simultaneously resisting every step toward it. Your brain isn't asking, "Will this make me happier?" It's asking, "Will this make me unsafe?" And those are very different questions. You see this in small moments. You delay sending an email for 3 days because once it's sent, something becomes real. You avoid applying for opportunities because rejection would force you to update the story you tell yourself. Or worse, acceptance would. Sometimes success is more destabilizing than failure, because failure keeps your identity intact. Success forces reconstruction, and reconstruction feels psychologically expensive, especially if your identity was built around survival instead of self-expression. Many people who struggle with laziness are actually carrying invisible emotional contradictions. Part of you wants freedom. Another part fears what freedom would demand from you. Part of you wants to be seen. Another part remembers what happened the last time you were fully visible. Part of you wants peace. Another part has spent years adapting to chaos, and now calm feels unfamiliar. So your brain hesitates, not because you're weak, because adaptation can outlive the environment that created it. Your patterns may not be flaws. They may be old survival strategies still running in the background. Think of the brain like a house with smoke alarms. If someone grows up around emotional unpredictability, criticism, pressure, or instability, their alarms become hypersensitive. Now even small decisions can trigger disproportionate stress responses. Not because the task is objectively dangerous, because the nervous system learned to associate movement with emotional risk. And over time, this creates a strange cycle. The more overwhelmed you feel, the less action you take. The less action you take, the more guilt you feel. The more guilt you feel, the more threatening tasks become. Until eventually, even opening a message can feel emotionally heavy. This is where many people misunderstand themselves. They think discipline comes first. But in behavioral psychology, action often depends on perceived emotional safety. The brain moves toward what feels manageable, not necessarily what's important. That's why you can spend hours doing low-stakes activities while avoiding one meaningful task all day. Your nervous system is choosing emotional predictability over long-term reward. Imagine your mind as a crowded room with only one small exit. Every unfinished fear, expectation, identity pressure, and future uncertainty is standing near the doorway. So when you try to move forward, everything jams. From the outside, it looks like inactivity. Inside, it feels like emotional traffic. And this changes how you approach the problem. Because if the issue were simple laziness, shame would fix it. But shame rarely creates sustainable action. Usually, it creates paralysis. When the brain feels attacked, the nervous system narrows. Curiosity disappears. Creativity disappears. Movement disappears. The goal is not to bully yourself into action. The goal is to reduce internal threat enough that movement becomes possible again. The first principle is this: make the task smaller than the emotion attached to it, not smaller than your capability, smaller than the emotional resistance. Because your brain predicts stress before action even begins. This is called anticipatory anxiety. So instead of finish the project, you open the document for 2 minutes. Instead of fix your life, you walk outside for 5 minutes without your phone. Small actions matter because the brain updates danger predictions through experience, not logic. Each completed action teaches, I survived movement. The second principle: separate decisions from identity. Many people freeze because every action feels permanent. One job application becomes, what kind of person am I? One creative project becomes, what if I'm not actually talented? But psychologically healthy people treat choices as experiments, not identity verdicts. Your brain becomes less threatened when actions stop carrying existential meaning. You're not carving your personality into stone. You're gathering information. Third, reduce hidden cognitive load. The brain has limited working memory, and unresolved emotional tension quietly consumes it. That's why people often feel exhausted without doing anything physical. Their mind is running dozens of background tabs, unspoken fears, unmade decisions, conversations replaying at night. So create external clarity. Write things down, not productivity lists, emotional lists. What am I avoiding? What outcome am I scared of? What would change if this actually worked? Naming vague fears reduces uncertainty, and the brain fears fog more than facts. Fourth, stop measuring progress by intensity. Your nervous system heals through consistency, not emotional force. A calm 10-minute effort repeated daily rewires behavior more effectively than one dramatic burst, followed by collapse. The brain strengthens pathways through repetition, not through self-hatred. And this matters because many people secretly believe change should feel emotionally explosive. But sustainable change often feels almost boring, quiet, stable, uneventful, like teaching your body that movement no longer equals danger. Eventually, something subtle begins to happen. You stop seeing yourself as lazy and start seeing the actual pattern underneath, a nervous system trying to protect you with outdated instructions. That doesn't mean staying stuck forever. It means approaching yourself with accuracy instead of contempt, because you cannot heal a pattern you keep misnaming. So here's the thought to remember. You are not a broken machine refusing to work. You are a person standing in an emotionally crowded doorway, and every small act of movement clears a little space, not instantly, not dramatically, but gradually enough that your brain begins trusting movement again. Maybe the goal was never becoming a perfectly disciplined person. Maybe the goal was simply learning that your life does not have to feel emotionally dangerous to move forward. And once your nervous system finally believes that, movement becomes quieter, but real.